Haven't heard from Les, but we've got enough people here, and we've got enough for you all here, and everyone's here, so let's get it rolling. So we have just a couple things to get the meeting going, and then we'll open it for a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. So call to order at 6:02. You good, Ben? Document up. Awesome. All right. So call to order at 6:02. Do an attendance roll call.
All right. Carolyn.
Here.
Dwight.
Here.
Mark. Here. Adam Montry.
Here.
Trustee Benzie.
Yes.
Leslie Hayden.
Not
present. Yeah. And then we're not doing Kathy.
Kat, no, because
she's officially.
yeah. Did she send a letter? Do you know?
Yes, so that was taken to the board at their last meeting and
Okay.
they accepted her resignation.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right, so approval of the agenda. I'd like to make a motion before we approve it, to add is a first bullet point under the joint meeting. The Planning Commission has a little bit of CIP business to take care of, so when we join, we're just gonna open it up with that. So I'd make a motion to add that to the agenda. Can I get a second?
Support. Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so can we then get a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Guess I'll make that as well.
I'll second that.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so agenda is approved as amended with CIP business for Planning Commission as the first thing under the joint meeting. All right. Approval of the minutes, so we have June and July minutes to approve. Let's do them one at a time. So do a motion to approve the minutes as submitted for June by Dwight.
I didn't actually get a chance to look at them yet, and so
Okay.
I don't know if that makes a big deal, but I'm sure they're fine.
Do we want
I
to-
didn't get a chance to print them, so my apologies.
No, that's okay. Do we want to push that to next meeting?
I'm sure they're fine, but if you want to go ahead and just wait, it's okay.
Yeah, let's push the June one to
Okay.
next meeting. We'll just approve it then. And then for the July minutes, there was just one change that I had, under approval of minutes. We have a motion to, approve both the May and the June ones, but we didn't approve the June ones.
Okay.
So if we can just scratch June 12th from the July minutes, then I think they are good. So can you get a motion to approve the minutes from July with the amendment that the June 12th approval will be taken out?
So moved.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None? All right. So then we'll move June 12th to the next meeting. All right, any disclosures of conflicts of interest? Or any public commented related to items germane to the agenda? Nope. All right, so I forget how we did this last time. It's a motion to.
Motion to open joint meeting.
All right, so I can make a motion to open the joint meeting with the Recreation Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission.
So moved.
All right, need a second?
Second.
Any?
Sorry.
Eager bunch. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so we're gonna open the joint meeting with the Planning Commission, and then the Planning Commission is going to do their CIP business before we hop into the Williams and Works presentation. So, take it from here.
Yeah,
All right.
sorry, I was concerned.
No, it's.
Okay. We just want to stand that way, the cameras will
Sure.
solve everything.
All right, Planning Commissioner, so we only have one item of business on the agenda, and that is approval of the CIP plan. So we can open it for discussion, but Miles, if you got any lead-in that you want to,
Yeah, I'll just say
offer.
that it's the same format as last year. We just changed up the tables for the financials for the non-discretionary projects. Those tables start on page 9 and then 10, and then the discretionary tables on 11 with all the follow-up information in the appendix behind it.
and there were just two things that I wanted to point out. So There is a typo, I think, on page 11, so the scores are noted, but the first two are out of 130 instead of 100. So we'll have that amended. And then just to point out that, you know, remembering our discussion from last time, we had a couple of comments that we wanted to attach to two projects. And so those comments are in the appendix for each of the projects. So it might be worth just reviewing the really brief comments to see that they're as we recommended, right?
I noticed that on the beach bathrooms, it said no comments, and that was the one, I didn't know if that was appropriate for us to put comments about it possibly being a permanent bathroom instead of an outhouse.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, did we all sort of come to an agreement with that?
I thought we had. but
Okay,
that's
that could be,
Maybe that was my positive.
I don't recall, but we can add that comment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, John.
Yeah, there was some discussion
Right.
about talking to Mr. Kessler, because he built the back into the dishwasher part, and see what, because it's already been designed, and he's already built it once. So at least make the price comparison.
Mhm. Yeah.
Page 11, just looking at, which one we had comment on, which one we didn't.
So Ray, do you want to just sort of suggest some language then for that comment?
Yeah, briefly. To possibly amend the CIP to look at the possibility of putting a permanent bathroom very similar to the ones in Wiswasser at the beach instead of I don't know what you have a term for that one that you had suggested.
You mean one with actual running water rather than a vault
Yeah.
style?
Because it appears prima facie that would fall well within your budget of that CIP. And I just think a permanent structure, and we had talked about it, would be much more appropriate there instead of, and I'm sorry.
Well,
I'll call it an
I think
outhouse.
the,
Vault's a permanent structure.
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it would be a permanent structure, the vault style, it just wouldn't have,
Well, I hope.
It wouldn't
it
have
would be,
water.
As opposed to having, you'd have to have a tank pumped anyway. And this way we wouldn't, because it was, we already have municipal sewer there, that we just had to drill.
but we don't have the other utilities, that was the reason.
Yeah, but
We didn't have the water and the electricity,
you could.
so if, you would have to add that, yeah.
Because there is a transformer accessible there, and there is also the ability to drill a well like we did at Wiswasser. I just thought that would be more prudent for us to.
Yeah, so the suggestion just is doing a price comparison, I guess, from
Yeah, that's-
the vault.
Sure.
We can do
I
that.
just think it would be better for the community to have permanent
Price comparison.
like certain more places.
Yeah.
The only other thing with that is,
Bathroom with water supply.
my thought with going with the vault style is, that bathroom would have to be heated in the winter because the pipe's freezing.
Yeah.
And if we're gonna keep it open for the ice fishermen, the vault style bathroom would be open year round, whereas the other bathroom would have to be winterized.
It'd be just exactly like Wiswasser.
But we'd lose 5 months out of the year, 4 months out of the year.
Yeah, we winterize the Wiswasser Park bathrooms.
So that's winterized.
You could do that too at Wiswasser, I mean, at the beach.
But then we would lose it for everybody that's using the lake
Now,
in the
we
winter.
lose the one at Wiswasser too, though, correct?
Right, but there's still a porta john at the beach.
Gotcha.
So
I
that's,
guess rather than, well,
yeah.
anyway.
No, we can do it. I mean, we can do a price comparison for sure. I'm just putting my thoughts out there for why we went with the vault style.
You know, the permanence, I think, would be much more harmonious, as Dan would say, with the community.
Sure, we can do a price
Our
comparison.
leader, he likes to use that word, and I think this is very important.
And all these comments are just going up to the Board of Trustees for their
Yeah,
own
it's
discussion,
nothing
so.
Cast in stone, so,
Mhm.
yeah, it was just a suggestion.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on the CIP plan? So it looks like we have at least, we have two amendments.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have one question or comment. All these non-discretionary projects, since I've seen these, I'm curious if sometimes we should find out why they're non-discretionary. Someone.
That's what administration determined.
Oh, I was just gonna say, who determined we're not discretionary?
Administration determines also, like, we use the state's guidance on determining what is a CIP project versus what's not. Even some of these that are on the non-discretionary, such as equipment, don't even get factored in our CIP calculations, because there's replacement of equipment or new equipment. It's not a capital improvement project, by the state's definition of capital improvement.
Other comments? if we are ready, then we can entertain a motion to approve the 2024 to 2028 capital improvements plan with the 2 amendments that have been suggested here.
Also move.
Second.
You have support? Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, the same sign. And the motion is approved.
All right. Thanks. So, move to Williams and Works? Yeah, all right. Thank you again for making the trip up. We appreciate it. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, good evening, everybody. So I'm here today to more or less have the opportunity to go over the engagement report that it looks like everybody has had the opportunity to receive. Now, this is just more or less a report out of some of the results. We don't go too much into analysis, but the intention here today with the report is to have somewhat of a dialogue. Obviously, we don't have hours and hours, but it's at least to give you guys an opportunity to discuss a little bit. And at least specifically for the Parks and Recreation Plan, we will use this, or I guess I'm saying to the mission that I encourage you that in the next little while, I'm going to go over a schedule at the end of this, that this report will also be used to inform the development of the goals and action program. So take into account your institutional knowledge, kind of what you know and bring to the table in terms of being a leader in the community, as well as what the community has shared with what their values are, what they think is important, what needs improvement, et cetera. For the non-motorized plan, that kind of thing will be done as well, but the focus is a little bit more on the Parks and Recreation Plan just because that one is on a specific timetable to meet state guidelines and state timeline. So, so the report is presented kind of for both plans, and there's valuable information for everybody. So with that in mind, I'm happy to just kind of go through things, not like necessarily line by line, but just kind of jump in unless anybody has any comments or questions before we begin. Okay, so with that, I'll just kind of start. So the first way, the way we broke this down was we split up the results related to the 2 pop-up planning activities or events that we had. And as you recall, we were at the Summer Solstice Festival in the doldrums of June when there was no water and it was kind of in a drought and very hot. We had a lot of people attend, as well as in July, the farmers market in the middle of the month. And then, of course, we had the survey open as well. So just to kind of go over the results. So results of some of the activities on page 2. We had 2 opportunities at each festival. There was an opportunity for people to vote with pennies what they kind of thought they wanted to see at the Upton Road property. And based on just sort of 5 selections or 5 different topics. And people were sort of far and above interested in the idea of having paths at this property for future park programming development. Tied for second place, kind of similarly, or tied for second place was a dog park as well as a playground. And then at the end, one group preferred the senior center, the other group preferred the baseball softball complex. But I think by and large there was a pretty strong takeaway in terms of what the community was interested in seeing at that property. So that's that. And I guess what I'm going to say is if you've got something to say, we can kind of like jump in, raise your hand at any time. That's kind of the format I'm going to go through here. Then we had an activity that focused more on the Park Lake Road corridor. And the idea is to more or less give people an opportunity to think about these 3 different areas as one sort of united corridor and think about what they could do for the future. And so what we asked people to do is, with this corridor, take some stickers and kind of design what they think they would like to see along the corridor. So if you can see, for example, on page 3, this is the corridor map that we designed. And then the little like maroon or red dots or icon stickers were what people placed. And then how we came up with the results, or kind of how to make sense of this mapping activity, is that we counted the number of stickers that were used in total on all the maps and counted up the number of stickers to give a better information in terms of the most preferred amenities in the corridor. So just as a high-level takeaway, the crosswalks, right? People really wanted more crosswalks in the corridor, so I think that's important for you guys to know. There was a tie between more sport courts and more bathrooms, as if you totaled up the two categories together. And then you kind of moving on through, you can see the other numbers of amenities that people desired. Interestingly or not interestingly or unsurprisingly, the boat launches were not necessarily something people were all that excited about. That was the least desired activity as sort of a consensus. So, yeah.
Do you think that's because they weren't present for that type of, for the voting? They wouldn't contribute to the voting as much as the citizens?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Like the voters might not, like someone that's a fisherman
Oh.
might not attend one of these events or.
Potentially. I mean, yeah, we weren't there at like a fishing tournament or, you know, some sort of like, you know, weekend, but, yeah, that could be.
It may also be that, you know, the things that people are asking for are all things that we did not have,
Yeah.
right? The things on the other end are things that are like a fishing dock's already, or boat launches there, there's some street parking there, there's a beach there, right? So they might be I don't want to say that's what they were doing, but that might be, you know, we don't have crosswalks, we don't have the bathroom, we don't have the sport court. It might be that, you know, because those things are already in place, they maybe didn't add on to those. Sure. Maybe.
The other part of that activity, if you go back to page 3, it might be hard to read, but in addition to like put your stickers on a map, we also had a check your preference, and we asked people to, they had 3 opportunities, you had the opportunity to pick one of 3 things, and the actual text of the things are on page 5. So option 1, we asked people, you know, do they want to just keep the corridor the exact same as it is, just maintain it, right? Just make sure that the road is paved frequently and, you know, clear of debris. The second option would be to add some on-road facilities, like bike lanes or wide shoulders, wayfinding signage, those kinds of things. And then the third option was to add some more facilities, we kind of termed it as off-road, trail for biking and walking and rolling, crosswalks, lights, banners, and people were most interested in option 3. You could say, you know, and then there's other people who didn't, who also selected no option. I found as I was doing the kind of the explanation of the activity, people weren't catching on right away that there was like a map and additional activity. So once I started pointing that out, more people paid attention to it. Other times people were just like, okay, thank you, and just, they just weren't interested in giving their opinion about that. So that's why, you know, that's why the no option selection was counted, and like, you know, what that may have also been. But I also just want to share that, you know, we're just trying to be transparent with the results in terms of, you know, counting every single map. So those are the total numbers received. Again, the takeaway for us seemed to be that, you know, people are looking for some kind of level of improvement in terms of like safety or amenities along the corridor itself. And I think that should be important to note. You know, people aren't looking for it to stay the same. They want something else added along that Park Road corridor. I kind of like to also frame it as like a safety kind of thing as well.
And I think it's really good to have data to be able to say that, because, you know, we all have heard that here and there, and so, and then to have, you know, the data to also back that up and say, yes, we were hearing it verbally, but now we're also seeing it.
Yeah, and
it's a good thing to have.
The nice thing too is that the 2 different types of events that we went to, I think there was one person that came up to me and said, oh, I did this at the Summer Solstice Festival. But other than that, everybody else, like there was, you know, I didn't see a lot of the same faces. Great. So there were different populations that were attending the events, and therefore we got, you know, more input from the community. And then the non-motorized plan, I realized when I printed it out that I must have sent over the PDF of like the actual poster size. So I brought with me, if you guys want to see it at the end, just the actual comments of the whole map. I'm not sure if what Taylor printed out, did it print out in the 8x11 size? You can see the whole map?
It did, but it's kind of.
It's hard to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, and the intention there is just to let you guys have a copy of it, and you look at it in the digital format, you can actually read, you know, the comments. And again, what was done was totaled and sort of summarized the comments, which is on page 7. So, and we just, in order to kind of make sense, because there wasn't quite as clear of numbers, it kind of made sense to more summarize these together. Was, so the total number, or the comments that were made kind of fell into these different categories. So there were 15 comments total in support of trails and related infrastructure, so whether that's like a trailhead, or there should be a trail here, or the trail should be like, you know, nature-oriented, something about trails in and of itself. So there were 15 comments about that. There were 11 comments related to support of sidewalks. So people wanted sidewalks to connect from, you know, point A to point B. We had lots also along various roads. There were 4 comments related to road safety, right? The road along here isn't safe. Traffic is going too fast. That kind of thing. There were 2 comments about Upton Road in and of itself. And then 2 comments in support of a splash pad. As you should also note that if you take the time to read through the report in the Park Lake Road corridor, not only were there stickers, but people wrote in their own kind of comments. So that just goes to show you, even though we had a non-motorized map, people were making comments about a splash pad. Not necessarily the kind of thing that we were asking for, but obviously there's an interest there that, you know, that people are interested in a splash pad. Along with the Park Lake Road corridor, so I think some of the comments were related to splash pad, dog park. I think there was also some talk about a farmer's market pavilion. So I think it's great, and it's important to note that people are going to tell you, even if there's not like a place for them to put their comment and it fits right, you know, specifically in the activity, they'll make the comment and they'll write it in themselves, which is good, right? The community feels that they can do that, so that's great. The other comments in the non-motorized map that were captured, placing a portable toilet across from the gun range. My guess was that was for the state park or the wildlife research area. Family bike rides that start at Wissawassar Park. There should be a park at the soccer fields, and then someone wants a parks and recreation village. So those are the comments. There weren't a lot of, I travel from, you know, this point to this point, and I walk from this point to this point. There were a few of them related to the non-motorized map comments itself. So the few routes that were identified by people at these events, we're going to use that in the non-motorized, like, sort of data gathering of the plan. This was more focused on the comments, but there just wasn't a lot of, you know, people sharing the routes that they took, and you know, this would be a really good one. There were a few related to some trails, kind of in support of the comments. They're in there, but I was hoping for a little bit more, but there wasn't. There was definitely some, and then specifically, kind of going back to that, you can see the trails around Park Lake, a trail connection down over to East Lansing, and over to Meridian Township. So that is the summary of the pop-up planning event activities. Do you guys have any comments or questions you want to share with each other before we jump into going over the survey results?
And I think that, you know, both of the committees and commissions should be thinking about that safety and crosswalk space. I think that should be a high priority for, you know, us to communicate to the Board of Trustees, that especially as, you know, if another kayak launch gets put in, if a bathroom, whatever type of bathroom goes in, that it seems like, you know, there's gonna be continually more and more people drawn down there, and so just thinking about how to prioritize or communicate that, like, there needs, you know, some safety type things. One of which could be a crosswalk or crosswalks, and others are, you know, other.
I think the road commission was working on some of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Is it a county-owned road?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what their budget is, and there is, anyways, I mean, this would be a great opportunity to have like an actual sort of mini corridor study to try to figure out, like, specifically have like an opportunity to study what would be best done on that corridor from a transportation and recreation perspective, because there's just so many assets and opportunities there, and it's a community gathering space, so it would be great if the road commission could think a little bit more broadly than just like the road commission to serve the community. Just, so, you know, a comment to share, so.
We did have, the Friends of Fire Lake did invite the Clinton County Road Commissioner over, and he actually brought a small bus with him from Clinton County Transit, and there were probably, what?
Dozen of
Yeah, we had
them.
15, 18 people there.
The planner was with us, the president of Friends of Fire Lake, several other members, and then the public were also invited. So we had a few people there, and we did go basically from Fire Lake Webster Road all the way south around the lake to State Road, outlining and identifying areas of concern and where improvements could be made. And a lot of that was covered, so it's on his mind, it's on their mind.
And it's on our, I want to say it's on our minds too,
Yeah.
but I want to say that I think this is the exact data we need to help us support this as it moves forward, to your comment, Adam.
Yep.
That's great. And I will say, like, you know, this is, reporting out on this and having this report is important because it's important to the process for the Parks and Recreation Plan. But then another piece that we'll get back to when we're more focused on the non-motorized plan is looking at the routes. People identified routes that are in Strava, which is another tool that we're using to collect where people are going. And so there's kind of a whole nother sort of piece or conversation related to it, you know, developing a network for the non-motorized plan. So I just want to kind of say that that piece is still very much on my mind, but just trying to take on these two processes in a meaningful way that respects the timeline of the Parks and Recreation Plan, and yet still brings along the non-motorized plan. So I just want to kind of let you guys know like that's still very much something that we are looking into. Okay. So just jumping into the survey results then, so just as a reminder, the survey went from June 12th to July 17th. And the data, the introduction here is just more or less like the methodology, which is really important, I think, for posterity to note, but we don't need to read it and spend time on it today, if that's okay. Let's jump into the results then. Question 1, it says, where, in what following areas of Bath Charter Township do you live? Maybe unsurprisingly, you know, section C is where most of the people who took the survey where they live. That's probably where a lot of the people in the township live, so, you know, not terribly surprised there. Also, not necessarily a lot of people who live within the township. I'm on page 11. Yep. Moving on to page 12. Oh, I forgot to highlight the number of people that took the survey.
It was 236.
236.
Yep, 236. So, and for us, that is a good number of people who take these surveys. We like to have over 200. I mean, that's really good. It all depends on the nature of the community and the size of the community, but over 200, like, we feel good about that. It's not like statistically significant and all that, but that's not what we're going for. So anyways, just want to make a comment about the number of people. Back to the questions. Question 2, sorry?
Talking amongst ourselves.
Okay. Question 2, what's your age? We like to see, and it's more common with these online surveys, kind of a range of ages, and that's what this shows, is that people from age 35 to 74 are the ones that, you know, a nice spread there of adults in the community. It's also nice to see a few younger folks and older folks took the survey. So, question 3, does your household contain children under the age of 18? And for those that took the survey, most of the, 2/3 of them practically did not have kids under 18. Question 4, your gender identity. Just slightly over half were female. That was the majority. The other answers are there as well. Question 5, which following best represents your race or ethnicity? And I would say unsurprisingly, the vast majority were white. I did think it was interesting. The next highest percent was prefer not to answer. And then the other groups as well. And I also like that we share not only the percentage of responses, but the number of responses. So it just helps you with knowing the actual number. Question 6, how important are the parks, trails, and open space to you and your household's quality of life? I would have to say, unsurprisingly, people feel that it's very important. So that's also good to see that, you know, the township is going to be looking for more improvements for parks and recreation and trails. Question 7, how often do you use park facilities in the township? People are using them basically, you know, once a month or a little bit more, or they use it a couple times, you know, a season. So it's probably those people that have, are out active and have kids versus those that kind of get out every once in a while just to stretch their legs or, you know, go for a color tour or get out for, you know, a walk in the springtime. But most people are, you know, are enjoying the parks.
Did you do any correlation between age and participation?
Do we do a correlation?
Yeah, between how many, you know, how old they were and how, and
Their frequency of
frequency of
use.
use?
We did not. Question 8, how adequately do you feel that the township's residents are served by the township's activities and programs? So, you know, most people feel like they're somewhat adequately served. Interestingly, it's kind of a 50-50, or not quite. There's also kind of an equal number of people who feel that it's great or feel that it's not so great. Question 9, are members of the household participating in programs outside the township? I know you guys had I remember we had quite a lengthy discussion about this. So, again, close, but I think the really telling thing is the information on the next 2 pages. So, page 20 and 21. 21 is the raw results of the answer to question 10. The answer to question 10, we categorized them kind of the best we could. So if you answered yes to the previous question about the programs, please list, answer yes, hang on, previous question. Oh, outside the township, okay. So if they're participating in something outside the township, please list below what it is. And so, give you a minute to read over that. Are there any surprises anybody wants to bring up, or make a comment on? Or things they found interesting?
I'll just digest it.
That's okay.
Was there any correlation between the school district and where they?
We didn't ask that kind of question. We didn't look at that, so.
Was there any comments about that?
No, not that we saw, outright.
A lot of people live in that area that had a high number of surveys are also in the Hazlet school district.
Yeah, that could, to John's point, you know, John, that could be like a leading reason on, because I'm seeing a lot of people swimming base up there in Hazlet schools, and they're
Yep.
swimming, and portions of involved in that.
Right.
So page 24 is the question 11. How important are the following in improving park and recreation facilities in the township? So the way this question was asked, people could choose very important, somewhat important, not important, no opinion. And so by the way of people like answering, we could kind of break down the way people answered. And so you can tell that most people, right, thought that preserving natural areas was important. Maintaining the existing parks, most people thought was very important. Whereas developing new parks and facilities, the community's kind of split, you know, equally and sort of like very important or somewhat important, obviously overall very important. So just give it a little bit of breakdown of understanding the answers to this question. And then we also asked people to let us know other topics that they thought were important. And so, because the number of responses, we categorized them. Trails and paths were another thing that came up in terms of things that they were most interested in.
What is a pump track? What is a pump track?
I believe that is for mountain biking. So,
What is that? I remember that.
so with
Pump track?
I think with
Number 6 on page 25.
Pump track.
Kind of a roller coaster for bikes.
Oh, is that what it is, an
So-
elevated mountain bike trail?
Kinda.
It's like a specific track that you can like, have, slope, little hills up and down on, or you go over like terrain. It's kind of like, it's a specifically designed kind of, course or route.
Like a Velcro.
Kind of, but it's outside, and I mean, like, it's, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard that.
There's one that's very similar to that on Ferguson Road, just west of Induit Township.
Sometimes in some nature areas that allow bikes, you'll find pump tracks being built informally. And depending on the trail manager, that may be a pain or not, that may be a liability or not. That's why it's nice to sometimes have mountain bike parks or mountain biking courses dedicated in a certain area, because that way that stuff doesn't get built, because obviously there's a need there in the community, so. Anyhow,
I don't know, consider pump track or not, but there's one on 27, where Nicholson is. It's not very kind of.
Yeah, it's like a BMX,
That's Guy Park, isn't it?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
question 12, what are the biggest obstacles in using the parks in the township? This is just helpful to kind of understand, if people's needs aren't being met, why, right? Is it something the township is doing? Is it something that is interfering with individuals or households, choices? And here it's that people have answered a lack of facilities or infrastructure, a lack of time, they use parks elsewhere, they don't know what's available, so. But you should also note on this question, 31 people skipped it. Now, whether that's because they didn't feel like they needed to answer it, or they didn't answer it, or they didn't want to, or whatnot, it's a different thing, but that's just also important to note. Some of the other responses on page 28, 28 and 29 is the raw data, but wayfinding issues. We didn't write down this, right? Five different people or comments were about wayfinding issues. They didn't have a desire, access issues, so just important.
I've been talking about wayfinding quite a bit, so I really like that data point there.
Well, and again, it's interesting because either they all were talking to you, Miles, and then they took the survey, or it's on people's minds, so.
I stayed out of it, so.
Oh, no, I was just kidding. But it's just kind of interesting that like, that just sort of came up, sort of organically from people just taking the survey. It's on people's minds
They
around.
probably saw Meridian Township and all their.
All their new signs, yeah.
What is Bath doing?
Question 13, if you use the parks and rec facilities and programs, why? Please select your top 3 reasons. So people here, they enjoy the outdoors, nature. They're doing it to improve their health and wellness. And then they protect the natural environment and wildlife. Close behind is they want to use, connect to or use a trail network, so. And then other responses are on page 31. And people wrote in their own comment.
A lot of dog park, dog park, a lot of,
Are there dog parks in the vicinity?
There's one on Central Park Place in Meridian Township.
There's also one, East Lansing.
One, there's 2 private, I mean, technically there's no co-ops, they have.
Yeah,
kind
that are
of
part of
apartments.
communities.
Somerset has,
Yes.
but it's only a fenced in area,
We had talked about that 15 years ago in the old Parks and Rec, for that 17-acre parcel over on to make that 2 acre.
Well, and people were somewhat interested in it, if you looked at that, and that's where, right, I'll leave that part to the next part. So anyways, question 14, what existing or proposed park and recreation amenities, facilities, and services are you most interested in? And these are people's responses. A place to walk, run, or roll was the top response. So trails specifically were the next 2, both paved and unpaved. Trailheads and canoe and kayak launches. So close behind were pickleball courts, and so on and so forth. And then other responses to that same question, right, ones people thought of themselves, because what we wrote wasn't quite what they wanted, was on page 33. A lot of comments are similar, and that's okay. Question 15, which groups do you feel are underserved by current recreation services and amenities? Please select all that apply. So interestingly, a majority of, the highest number of, the choice that was selected the most often is adults. So people feel that sort of adults in general are not served by the recreation facilities in the township. Followed by young adults and seniors. So I thought that was interesting.
I feel the need to comment.
Yeah.
Particularly when most of the survey respondents are adults and seniors, so.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah, so people who took the survey felt like, at least a third of them, felt like, well, there's not enough here for us to do. I don't know. And then, of course, on the following page are people's own other responses. Question 16, so these questions, the next ones are more about the non-motorized kind of infrastructure and non-motorized kind of focused questions. So question 16, the most frequent way I currently get around the township is, unsurprisingly, people are driving their own, and then a few other people, other biking, walking, rolling. Question 17, the way I travel around the township is primarily based on the following considerations. Convenience and travel time, is maybe again not so surprising. Option availability, safety, reliability, so cost savings is apparently not a factor. And that fluctuates a lot of time depending on available infrastructure and just how expensive gas is. Question 18, the most frequent way I would like to get around the township is, most people still want to drive their car, which is not surprising, right? And that's okay. But there are a good number of people who would like to bike, walk, or roll. So I thought that was interesting. One person feels like they want to go on horseback.
I see Kathy's husband Mike riding his horse on Stoll pretty often and down there, sometimes down Clark.
Question 19, if you walk, roll, or bike regularly, why? A lot of people do it for physical health and wellness. They also like to do it because it's fun. And then mental health benefits are top responses. So it also, to point out the circumstances, so economic hardship or loss of license, that's not really an issue for people in the community who took the survey. So, but 73 people also skipped that question. Question 20, what methods of non-motorized or active transportation do you participate in? So a lot of people don't go to school or work by walking, biking, or rolling. A lot of people don't go to events, but a lot of people do those things for health, recreation, or enjoyment. Which, what this question can kind of get to is the kind of facilities, ideally, the township could advocate to build, right? So there might be sort of more of an argument for an off-road trails as opposed to like an on-road wide shoulder. But this is only one part of that piece of the puzzle. But this is the kind of question that kind of starts to point at some of those things. Trails are more expensive though, so. Question 21, I would like to see more opportunities for kids to be able to bike, walk, or roll to school. Everybody said yes, which is kind of funny because if you think about it, people are like, well, yeah, but I still want to drive, but my kids should be able to walk to school.
I think that was because everybody's over the age of 65 that answered that question. They used to do that.
Sure. Question 22, what are the biggest obstacles in using your trails, sidewalks, or other non-motorized infrastructure? People don't really feel safe. They don't have a direct connection to destination. It's too far away or inconvenient. They don't know what's available. So, and then those other categories our responses are on the next page. Access issues. They don't really have a desire or need. Pests. I'm not sure what that one is, but. And then question 23, at the very end, it's the, what else do you want to share with us? And those comments, the only way that we would have cleaned them up is we would have put a punctuation at the end if we did that, and a uppercase letter to begin the sentence or the statement. Otherwise, I realize we missed one or two there, but otherwise, they're as they were written. I think there's 100, yeah, there's 100 comments. And at the very end, there's just a summary, which kind of is a summary of what I just went through. So with that, are there any particular comments that you have on the survey, or the engagement report itself?
I feel like we're really missing a large sector of our population by the youth vote, or the youth's concerns and ideas, and I guess I point that out, but I'm also really excited to see that people really want trails, and the reason why they're doing that is for conservation reasons, and I think that that's something that the township really does try to, work in partnership with the state on, so I think that's kind of a good, that's successful, but it's, again, I think services for youth are being neglected in our planning.
I will say, so when we do our pop-up planning events, and we have the table, and there's a couple different activities, like at the Summer Solstice Festival, there were a good number of kids. When adults with kids, and just kids, but when adults with kids approach the table, we welcome, we tell the parents, like, this is for everybody. And, if your child would like to participate, like, here is a cup of pennies for you, adult, and here's a cup of pennies for you, child. So we are actively trying to get the input, and we explain it to the kid, or a lot of times the parent is willing to help their kid, like, participate in that. So that isn't specific, or doesn't fully address your comment, but I do want you to know that there is intention when we have people approach us to make sure that these kids feel that they can participate if they so choose.
I had a couple of comments or questions. So was there an attempt to determine how representative the sample was based on known demographics of the township? Just to compare with things that we do know?
No, that was not done. That would be relatively simple to do, just because of, the census data. So you could just look at that by looking at the census, but no.
Yeah, I just a point out to what, I just got on the census website to see how many under 18 live in the township, and out of our whole population, it looks like it's just around 16%. Under 18.
What was the survey number on that then? Far less.
I think it was less. Let me see. We had, so under 18, we had one person take it, or 0.4%.
The other thing I was just gonna say is that some people mentioned, did you find correlations for this or that? So this is all descriptive, but there's a lot of stuff you could do with this. And so I assume that the data is available to the township.
If you guys want the raw Excel results, we can give that to you. We just have like limitations within the project scope to sort of do a deep dive, but if you want me to pass along the Excel date, like the very,
Miles
very
and I
raw
love
data.
statistics.
Okay.
Well, and we can mess around with that. I was gonna say too, I mean, 62 and over is 21.2% of the township, so, and we just skew a little bit over this whole area north of Lansing skews a little bit.
That's the census, you mean?
Yeah,
And what is it on the survey? That was far higher in the survey, right?
on the survey is far higher.
Yeah. See, it just seems to be such a small sample there.
It is.
So I
It
don't
is,
think
but I would
it's
say
good.
I've done a lot of surveys in my day,
Sure.
trying to administrate surveys, getting over, I think this is a pretty good response for a
Yeah.
survey, this topic.
It is, and you might say that's terrible, and I would say I don't disagree with you, but you can only get, like, people are only gonna take it if it's interesting to them and if it's short, and so, we're doing the best we can without you guys spending $20,000 on a full-blown survey, which sounds insane, but I mean, just,
You can't do that.
you can,
Yep.
but I don't think that it's not necessarily the best use of resources, so.
But you could try re-weighting some of the responses based on the demographics from the census, right? So some people do things like that.
Anything else on the report? If not, I'll kind of shift to sort of next steps. Go ahead.
I just kind of randomly looked through here at the comments, and one of them was critical of our efforts to invest in the infrastructure of Park Lake, and they're just like, why don't we just dig a new lake? And that was you.
Could you pull that mic over?
So there was some concern about building the infrastructure and thinking that we really need to focus on Park Lake, and from your perspective, would you agree with that, or?
What comment was that, so I can just look at it a little better?
Number 47. It's kind of something that the community can feel proud of, is the Park Lake, and we've been investing money into keeping the invasive plant life out of there. But there is a concern too that it just might grow, and if we should spend that money on developing the park or the lake instead of the infrastructure around it.
Well, I guess my question back to you is, so there is a lot going on around near like Park Lake Road kind of corridor. And so I guess like one way to look at it is what this is why in some ways like having a corridor study would be kind of cool, or trying to figure out like, what is it that does the township want to achieve, around and by Park Lake? Is there a safety is there some sort of overall like safety or community development, or do you want to target like a theme, like, oh, we really want to invest in the park? In some ways it's kind of like, well, so, when you're thinking about the park and recreation plan, an action plan could be a next step could be asking that question kind of for you guys. What do you want to do with Park Lake, the Park Lake area, the Park Lake Road corridor, and spend some time figuring that out kind of yourself, as in terms of a next step. And kind of trying to answer the question I think you're also asking. I mean, people were really excited to have an opportunity to think about how they could make the area better. There was people really interested in crosswalks, as we saw. They really wanted more, let's say, like safety enhancements. They were excited to hear that was something that was being considered. It wasn't like, oh, well, that's, they didn't think, the people that we talked to, they didn't kind of communicate back to us that, oh, this is a waste of money, or this isn't needed. Like, there was like, oh yeah, like we could do more, we should do more. So that's kind of, I would say, like two ways to kind of answer your question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think maybe as we, continue to talk about this and work through writing the recreation plan, and that the committee and committees, can think about if there is a mini corridor study, like, okay, how do we phase it in, right? So, right, if we just finished our last room in our house and it took 15 years, I would have liked to do all the house 15 years ago, but that's not how it works, right? And so it's like, what do we, how do we think about, these are all the things we want to do there in that space, as well as around the township, and then how do we prioritize and advocate for those things? And sometimes they prioritize themselves for safety or other issues, or things break or infrastructure needs, and sometimes there's money that becomes available, whether it's through ARPA or other other future funds, or DNR trust fund grants, those types of things. When we start thinking about how do we then take this information, this data, these conversations, and prioritize the 25 to 30 different things that would be awesome to do at the township all at one time that we can't really do.
So in some ways, this leads to kind of like a good segue to like, well, what's next, right? So, so what I had kind of proposed was kind of over the next couple months, what's going to be happening for the park and recreation plan, just to kind of share with you guys, because it just feels like a good natural thing. Because a lot of like the last couple months have been getting data and just gathering information, and now it's like time to actually start, I'd say, like writing the heart of the plan. So at this meeting, we're reviewing this document, right? So the next meeting for the Recreation Advisory Committee would be September 11th. And at that meeting, we could have a whole conversation about the goals and the action program. So before that meeting, I'm gonna give you guys some homework. And so I would send it to Taylor, she'd send it to you, but it's basically like a worksheet or two to have you guys sit there and based on, again, your institutional knowledge, you're being a champion of the community, and what the community said, what are the goals that you guys want to have for this park and recreation plan? What is what are some of the things you want to accomplish through this action program? And so by doing this homework, one, for those of you that are big on wordsmithing, you can go ahead and wordsmith to your heart's delight. Those others of you that are like, I just want to kind of get this general sentiment, you can do that too, but that will be your homework, and then at that September meeting, that's what we would be doing. In October, at the October 9th meeting, I would then come back with a whole draft plan to review. So that means between now and October, not only are you going to have homework to develop a goals and action program at that meeting, but there'll be a few subsequent chapters for you guys to review. It'll be like inventory, administrative structure, stuff that hopefully won't need a lot of changing, but that way when it's time to review that draft plan in October, it wouldn't be the first time that you saw it. You know, you can kind of review it along the way. And then in early November, so after that October 19th meeting, we review the draft plan. I send it out to you ahead of time. At that meeting, we discussed like the big scale changes. After that meeting, we work through the minor edits and whatnot. And then in early November, would start the 30-day public review comment period. That is really important. That's one of those milestones that we have to check. And so after that, then it would set us up for the township board. My understanding is the township board needs to see something at one meeting and then they vote on it the next. So that means the township board would see the Parks and Recreation Plan in December. They'd vote on it in January, and the township staff then can have all of January up to February 1st to submit the plan online to the DNR, as well as all the subsequent paperwork that they need to do. That was kind of the general tentative outline I had kind of proposed to Taylor. So, you know, between the next couple months, you guys, we're going to be doing a lot of work. That sound good? I'm hoping to, I've reached out to the DNR person. I'm not sure if I got his email mixed up or not, but basically in September, October, we're going to try to have the Rose Lake State Wildlife Research Area director or a staff person come to the meeting just to sort of, you know, chit chat and kind of do a get to know you, kind of build a relationship. So some of that either September or October meeting will be partially just sort of having an opportunity for just some dialogue and relationship building. And then we'll, you know, then we'll do like the actual kind of workshop of the other parts and take care of sort of the business, the park and recreation plan. That was sort of another piece I wanted to kind of bring to your attention as well.
And just to clarify, we would do that during the regular meeting date of this, okay, during our, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm working with, like I called him and like I said, the email, either he didn't get it or I'm gonna call him up and just double check. But he would be invited to a meeting. That way, you know, kind of, also like not only a good introduction to the township, but to the Recreation Advisory Committee as well.
Definitely, that sounds great.
Yeah, so the next little while, like I said, we've got some marching orders to kind of get going and get this all lined up to have you guys reach the deadline in a timely manner.
Great.
So that's that. And then Parks or the non-motorized plan, I haven't yet had a chance to kind of like get my arms around that because I wanted to make sure that we were comfortable with the Parks and Recreation plan. But that is still forthcoming. It's just we don't have the deadline that we need to make sure that we're hitting. And all this happens really quickly. It'll feel like we're doing a lot of work, and the time will go by fast. So, so that is what I have. That is all I have, unless there are other questions or comments from either group.
With regards to Rose Lake, are there other recreation areas that might give us ideas that you're aware of on what that can develop into?
So that's a good question. So my experience has been more so at least my experience has been that at least with state parks, right, this is a wildlife research area, so it's different. With state parks, there has been more, the DNR has been more open to sort of having a conversation and dialogue than they have been in the past, so that's like a good first step. When I haven't had the opportunity to work with people specifically in the wildlife research areas yet. My hope is that It's good to have communication. We were working on a project down in Yankee Springs, where some of like the non-motorized trail sort of stuff, there was an opportunity to kind of develop a connected network, right? When people are out biking and walking, they don't know that you're stopping and starting at one place and another. And so there was an opportunity to dialogue and see if there were like mutual benefits to both parties as like a common place to start, in terms of like a conversation of what could be, you know, thought about or developed, whether it's now or in 5 years or 10 years. The state wildlife lands have their own master plan. Now, they might be a little bit old at this point, but they exist. And so there's the idea that the state is also having and planning and thinking about what's in mind and what could their lands be developed into, or how will they be. And if, again, like trying to find some commonalities, you know, if the township knows the state is gonna kind of keep this land in a certain way, well, that kind of influences potentially what you might be doing in terms of your park and recreation or non-motorized sort of choices. You know, in terms of either to build upon, you know, again, the mutual things, or if the state park is, or the state land is gonna be this way, well, if they have that, we don't have to necessarily, you know, provide that in our offerings. So, I mean, it's really just sort of like, well, let's sort of talk and see if there's, you know, how the conversation goes, and then from there, you know, do you invite this person or someone from staff, you know, quarterly or biannually, you know, just to try to continue to see if there are opportunities where you could go in on state grants together, or other kind of, you know, programs. Is there programs offering where you guys didn't know about it just because you didn't, you know, don't have a relationship? And I don't know that that's true or not, but it's just to try to open doors. That's kind of where I have found it to be, I guess, a good starting point for conversation.
Just to
Yeah.
that point, so in my regular job, I do a lot of work with the Wildlife Division within DNR.
Oh, okay.
And I'll just say that they are really interested in doing exactly this kind of thing, but they are essentially as clueless as we are. You know, they don't have the resources to sort of put a point person for every township in the state.
Right.
But those that make the effort and reach out, they're really receptive to that. And so they're really trying to figure that out just as much as townships are trying to figure out how to work with the DNR, especially when there's substantial DNR land holdings, right, in those townships. And, you know, one point to that is that they've funded MSU students that are doing dissertations and thesis work on that very question of, you know, how do you work with townships when the DNR has large holdings of state lands in those townships, especially wildlife recreational areas. So they're interested. And so I think it's exactly right. If we reach out, they'll say, hey, this is an opportunity for us to actually do some meaningful work with the township. And I think they would jump all over it. But they're probably not going to initiate it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds great. I think the other thing that, you know, doesn't get said about Bath a lot, but, you know, from being at MSU, and, you know, I was there for a decade, I'm not there, haven't been there for almost 5 or 6 years, but it's like, everyone loves to work, well, here with Bath, like, when you contact people, like, because it's so close to campus, it's so close to the state capitol, it's so close to the headquarters offices of DNR, or all those places, and, but there's got this rural piece of it, and that they don't get in a lot of other communities around here, and so, yeah, I think that they don't have to drive 3 hours to have a meeting, you know, or to do a farming research project. I think we've done plenty of them on our farm because they're close and the students can get here in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it where in the future, a future iteration, if the township and if the state is amenable, do you have a joint area recreation plan in the future that's some sort of pilot, or you get a little bit more money or funding from the state? You know, like, I just pulled that out of my hat. So I'm not making any promises, but again, like, you just, you know, you just don't know where these kinds of things lead. So it's always good, in my opinion, to at least talk and develop relationships with your neighbors, and from there, who knows, you know, kind of where they lead, so.
We won't use your name.
And to that point again, someone in the survey, in one of the comments mentioned MSU's Corey Marsh area. And I think that's also a great opportunity for that to make connections with the people. The director is in my own Fisheries and Wildlife Department, right? And she would love it if she could talk with Bath about how to connect with the community and how to make it more accessible to people. She's she's doing some great things out there, just trying to raise the profile of that area and to work with the township and doing it. I'm sure she'd be really happy to do that.
And she's a super great person, on top of, on top of all of that really good work too, so, yeah. And I think it's a place that people don't know about very much.
For sure.
All right,
Cool.
so thank you. If you have any comments or anything else, I'll be happy to take them. And if you guys want to take a peek at the posters there, kind of, you can see it like it's a more legible form, I can have those out too, so, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, to say thank you from, both on behalf of both commissions and committees for your work on this, so we really appreciate it. It's been a really good experience in just a short amount of time, so thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, so then do we make a motion to close the joint meeting? Is that?
Yep.
Right. Is there any other comments before we do that, that anyone has? No? So,
I'll make a motion to close the joint meeting.
all right, and the second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No? All right. Well, thank you for making the time to come in again and do this. And it's something we've talked about doing with some other committees as well and commissions because of the good experience we've had the last 2 times. So if there's any time that you ever want us to come to one of yours, everybody's, feel free to offer the invite. And we're thinking about some other ones as well to do, just so that we're all talking more than we have in the past. So. All right, so moving on to the agenda. Old business, the only thing we had on here was that we talked about, Becca's not here, but we had talked about having an overall rec event schedule. And Carolyn, I don't think you were at the meeting, but the reason it came up was because you had asked me about that at one time before that meeting, like, hey, I know there's baseball, I know there's basketball, I know, but we don't know. And then at that meeting, the discussion was that there's an internal one to staff, and then we're talking about how do we also, so that when people ask us, we know
Sure.
what's happening.
Yes, so Becca and I talked about that last week, and we basically just took the internal one and made it external. I just wanted to have a conversation with her first because I wasn't sure if she was putting like contact information in there and stuff like that. But she said that it was just basically so that she could keep her life straight. So we just decided to make that external. So that is on the recreation page now. I put it on there last week.
Great.
And then Becca is working on getting stuff put on there as we're adding more programs. So
Cool. So then we can direct people to
Yes.
that and say like, hey, this is
yep.
when they start. This is the approximate time they run. Cool. Is that helpful, Carolyn, for the question that you?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right, moving on, new business. Taylor wanted to have the 2024 budget discussion on there for us to, I'll touch base on.
Yeah, so I'll speak to the recreation and farmers market, and I'll let Ben speak to the parks aspect. So we are submitting budget information to the superintendent. She has to have her draft to the board by September 1st. So Becca did submit her recommendations to me last week. Not a whole lot has changed. She did up the program budget by an extra $5,000 because she is hoping to bring in some new programs next year. So that was really the only change, was that she increased that, increased her line for education. She's planning on getting some new certifications next year. And then farmers market, she increased the line item for doing demos so that we can start doing more of those next year. Increased the line item for farm to fork, since we're hoping to bring that back. And then increased her certification on there too. She's hoping to add some additional stuff with MIFMA.
Cool.
So that's kind of all that's changed with that. And then I'll let Ben speak to parks, and then we can talk about any recommendations you all have.
A couple of big projects, next year that I have planned is one, the parking lot at West Wasser. We've had that engineered, by Kebs, and I had it bid out by Levitt and Stark just to get a budget number, and they came in right around 150,000. And that's a complete, parking lot construction with underground water control for the stormwater from coming down Park Lake Road and infiltrating into the playground. And I think that's important to get that project done before we do our port in place. And then we'll see if the CIP projects get picked up. But I think that is a very important part of that, is to get the water under control before we do anything with the playground.
Because the water's just it's gonna get poured in place and then
Yeah.
you're gonna get right back
Messed up
onto it.
again.
Yeah.
So, in the case that those do, the CIP project for the port in place does get picked up, or it ends up getting put into the budget. I did not include it in the budget because it was a CIP and we've included it in our grant.
Yep.
So, that'll be depending what our funding is like, but it possibly could be bumped up to almost $300,000 in addition to what it was last year, if those two projects get picked up. I put in $3,600 to buy 3 more aluminum picnic tables, to replace some of the old wooden ones down to, Cousins Park. They're about $1,200 a piece, which seemed like quite a lot, but that's what they are. That was the best deal I could find on them. And then I would also like to do some more landscaping, planting some more trees, more shrubs, shade trees. And that will have to be kinda in conjunction with that parking lot construction. So once we get that done, we'll be able to decide where we can put some more, trees at Wisswasser, but as well as at the other parks. I would like to get some more, vegetation and like flowering trees around, this doesn't really parks, but cemeteries kinda go with the parks. So along the Webster Road, and just kind of beautify the entrance to our community and our highlights of our community a little bit better. That's about it for projects. And I would like to take your consideration of your projects that you had in mind. I did have one question to you about the soccer field. And I feel like it's a little bit bigger of a project that we're gonna be able to handle to do it right. And I think that we're gonna have to shut down one season or the other to make that happen. To get the south end of that field back to flat. I think it's gonna take some more work than just putting a little dirt and grass seed on it. So I'd open it up to you guys for conversation.
I almost passed out when you said that. Just kidding, not really passed out, but, I would say, definitely not this fall would be the best time since we already have things.
We're talking 24 budget.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Oof, okay.
We did do a little bit of maintenance out there and put some dirt and grass seed. I don't know if you've been down there. So that was 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
Or so. Yeah, we're talking 24 budget.
Okay. I always feel better.
Or maybe 25, this is planning out, when
Right.
do we wanna do these things?
Yeah, I would have to marinate on that thought a little more, but it would probably be a conversation with the school to see if, they would be willing to let us, use, like, maybe the varsity field for some of them and add a couple more fields, back there and see if that could be a possibility.
Yeah, the middle school back there.
Yeah, like.
Yeah, where
we
the
have,
boys
like,
varsity.
we have like the
plays.
U8 team there behind the elementary, but maybe we could add in like a 7v7 field there as well, and then, kind of
Yeah.
for a season use it there. And so just, we could have a conversation and ask the school. I'm sure they might be willing.
Yeah, this would obviously be a conversation with
Yeah.
us, school,
Sure.
you guys. We're not just gonna arbitrarily decide
Yeah.
when to do it.
Oh, yeah.
But just to put that out there,
Sure.
that you guys start thinking about it. Any other budget requests, ideas that you think I ought to include for 24?
Some of the things we had talked about, you didn't mention because they were included like in like the fundraiser, like the CIP and like the Spark grant, right? So like the new signage, things like that, and like the parking lot at is it the Robson Park, is that what it's
That's in the
called?
budget
That's
for
in
this
it.
year.
Yes,
Yes.
okay,
That's just a project we
Okay.
haven't gotten to yet.
okay.
And then kind of leading into the next conversation, some of the things that we've talked about prior were also given to the superintendent as ARPA recommendations. So this is kind of overlapping with that too, that could end up being funded in the budget through ARPA dollars.
Sure.
Or if it's not used for ARPA dollars, then some of those things may just be funded in the budget through general fund money.
Okay.
Does anyone have anything else that they'd like to see Ben include?
Do you have time or resources to like do other parks that aren't on our Wiswasher or Cousins Park? Some of the ones that we don't get to as much? Is there
Like,
Robinson Park comes to my mind, and the one that's undeveloped by the, out,
Upton Road.
yeah. Do you get to work on those at all?
I can, yeah, it's just prioritizing and, you know, making sure that we have the time and resources to do it. But yeah, we definitely can work on those, and we've thought about, even, it would be very simple to put a small parking lot at Upton Road and brush hog a path around it for somebody to walk, you know, we could at least open it up for something, not necessarily a permanent solution for that property, but it could be used for something.
They are maintained now though, if that's what you're referring
I
to.
guess what I was really getting to is just that I was just hearing how much people wanna walk and how much people
Yeah.
wanna conserve.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
they are
nature,
maintained now, they
yes.
just haven't had like extra upgrading done, if you will. So like, I mean, obviously I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, like
with what you
Robson
do.
Road is mowed every single week, and the trails are, somebody goes through the trails and make sure there's no trees on the, you know, over the path, or something broken where somebody's gonna get hurt or something like that, so they are maintained and looked at regularly.
I mean, we walk by that at least 3 to 4 times a week, and it's always, in fact, it's never overgrown, it's never, I mean, it looks like you would go into a park and, yeah. So that park always looks
Yeah, and
nice.
we always do mulch once a year along the fence and the entryways, and there's a couple flower beds there. So we're maintaining everything regular. But as far as anything new development, we haven't really got into that yet.
DNR might like that, parking lot paved there too, I'm thinking, cause it could be a location point for people to get around the Rose Lake area.
There's one just south of there there's an access parking lot for Rose Lake, just past Dempsey's house, just
To the
south of
south of
Dempsey's
it?
house. What's that?
To the south of Dempsey's?
Yep, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly,
that's the one
yeah,
I'm talking
first
about.
one, right
It's just-
south of Dempsey's.
It's just grass, you're
Yep.
saying?
Yeah. You know, thinking kind of big projects, based on this, but also long before this, have been thinking about, that it would be really, sometimes, so for the Upton Road Park, I think it would be great if we could hire a firm to help envision like what that would look like. You know, if it's 18 acres, I mean, it's not a huge piece of land, but it's a big piece of land, and when you start saying like, people are looking for a dog park, people are looking for walking trails, people are looking for natural area, people are looking, you know, it's like, we can take this and draw like, what if a trail went like this and a trail went like this, but I think, I would love to see someone who had, an organization or a firm that has that skill set, that takes those, and then we can say like, what does an arboretum look like, that, not that that's what's gonna be there, but what does, you know, something like that look like? You know, I think about like the arboretum, both at the, you know, south of the railroad tracks at MSU, south of the Plant and Soil Science Building, south of the Children's Garden there, but also the arboretum at U of M there. There's a really nice arboretum at Penn State, that was developed, like they were just developing it when we were graduating, you know, and it was basically an open field at Penn State, and it was like, okay, like, what does it look like, and how do you get there, and what do the phases look like, but it's like, is that space big enough to have a partial dog, or a dog park and walking space, and, you know, how to incorporate, like, what type of trees would we need to plant now, so that, you know, I think about in 5 to 10 to 20 years, as that space changes and develops, sort of, you know, what does that look like, or how do we think about what that space looks like, and then I think that could be like a starting conversation point, if there was something that we had,
Sure.
you know, even rough guide that this is a here's 3 proposal options of what that space could look like, kind of thing.
And I know I kind of envisioned, I think we lack sports fields. And if you've ever been out to the Mount Hope Park in Delta Township, it has that, concessions, 2 baseball fields, a walking path all the way around it. You could put a dog park in there.
Right.
So it could be a multi-use piece of land.
Right.
With some sort of facilities, amenities there.
Yep, definitely.
Also. So, yeah, I like that idea of
And we had
having
talked
somebody.
about a community center.
Yeah.
Possibly, that's sort of like, all right,
Rec
it's almost
center.
like, here's the kitchen sink option of all the things that we said, and is that doable? Yeah.
The facility of Mount Hope, it's nice.
It is.
Yeah,
It's
it
is.
It's a little bit
Playing
bigger
soccer.
than that, but
Yeah, it's
than
nice.
that piece of property, I think that's closer to 30 acres.
Yeah,
But it is a nice
it
park.
is very nice.
Yeah.
I like the idea of getting some professional advice. I think that's real strong. I
Yeah.
think that's just a real good idea.
And that may be something that we can recontract with Williams and Works with. I'm not sure what exactly they have done with that. I think they've done some trail, like mapping and stuff
Okay.
like that. I can check with Tanya on that just to get an idea of if that's something they do, and
Yeah,
can look into that eventually to contract with them maybe, since we already have the relationship, but.
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds great. And I think too, Dan had said it today with DNR funding grad students, but
Yes.
there's also when we were there, especially when Drew was at the Farmers Market Associations, there were so many student projects where it was they're gonna do these 4 things for this farmer's market that's in the area where they live, or, I think out at Corey Marsh now, they're putting more and more interpretive trail signage out there, and, start thinking about fisheries and wildlife students, being involved,
Yeah.
in some type of small project out at that space, and, the same thing I think with that, talk about the mini corridor study, it's like MSU is so close, and just being able to connect with them, and
Yeah, and we've, I know this group hasn't been a big part of that, but, they've been a major part of the Safe Routes to School with them. They've been instrumental in that, so we've already kind of created a relationship with them with that, so I think
Yeah.
continuing that is definitely important,
that sounds great.
yeah.
Is there money in the budget for consulting?
There can be.
We have line items
Can
for
propose
consulting,
some, right?
but such as if this idea to go with Williams and Works or another firm to kind of do conceptual stuff for that, we can discuss that with Karen of including some sort of budget in there for that. Obviously, that could be an amendment later on too.
The landscape, architecture and planning has done a lot of work around Lansing area, but their owner is outside, right, the Leslie area, I think it is, so they come through Bath quite a bit and just kind of knows the area really well, so that might be an interesting
Sure.
insight on this project too.
Sure, and we can always do another RFP too, and kind of get feelers out there again, so.
And then we've got Christmases right here too for,
Yep.
plant material wise in terms of bigger, ability to move and install larger trees, and, they were always part of that conversation for Cousins Park when it's like, all right, what are we thinking about there in the future, and,
And that actually, I guess since we're on that topic.
Yeah.
They were, Allison Acres over on, Valentine Road.
Yeah.
Has donated a tree.
oh, nice.
And they were actually, Chris Hagerman and Shane Christmas were going over there to pick out this tree. And they're gonna plant it in Cousins Park, so we don't have to decorate that big monstrosity of a tree for the holiday
Yeah.
lighting ceremony. So
Nice.
they were generous enough to donate the tree. Shane's gonna move it for us. And that, they were actually heading over there, I don't know if they made it tonight because of the rain, but, it might be on Wednesday.
Okay,
So that's also a good point with, resources in the community.
yeah.
That was actually part of my update. Just to
Get
that
get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
sorry. So, all right, so, anything else, any ideas? feel like you got some stuff that you can add in from us?
Yep.
Alright, moving on, so staff report, and Mike's not here, so on to Ben.
That was it.
That was it, alright, check them
Just
off,
kinda
right?
waiting, you know, waiting for this rec plan to develop, and I think it's gonna, we'll have a better, be able to dig into that once we get an actual heading on which way we're gonna go.
Yep.
I have a short thing. I don't know if I mentioned it last meeting, but we received $10 million for 2025 for Chandler Road. So there's going to be significant work done, sewer work that needs to be done so that we can have more development on that corridor. But also road work is going to be done. So currently, the same smaller committee that was working on the Webster Road corridor has been reconvened to kind of talk about the Chandler Road corridor, and discussing kind of a lot of what we've talked about tonight of having, you know, wider shoulders for safer biking. If we are gonna implement a sidewalk, there's been discussion about having a way to hook into the Northern Trail system that starts at State Road. So there's a lot of discussions happening around that right now. Obviously that's still a little ways out, but we're gonna get into the design process here pretty quick in 2024. So I will keep you guys updated on that with the non-motorized portion and recreation. But that section that will be redone will go from Coleman all the way to Stoll, so it's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Yes, so the total project is 12.2 million, so we will still have a deficit that we're going to have to make up for. But it's really great that we were funded that much money through the state, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
great,
yeah. Exciting stuff.
it is. Alright, public comment?
I would just like to make one comment. You talked about park at Upton Road. About 2 decades ago in DeWitt, we partnered with MSU Parks Department, and they did 3 renditions of proposed park for the old Sligo pit there on Howe Road.
Uh-huh,
And they did mock-ups and cost and everything. And it was all graduate students. It was a great rendition. Nobody took any action on it, obviously. But they did a beautiful job, so you might want to reach out to them.
yeah,
I mean, it was free, and they did a terrific job.
yeah, that's a great
They
idea.
had public meetings, and they did a real nice job.
Great, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Alright, report from BOD?
I'm gonna continue with Taylor's $10 million that the state of Michigan is funding Chandler Road with. Chandler Road's a very interesting road. It's county road, and it is in, half of it is in DeWitt Township and the other half is in Bath Township. And so then you have a section now that is in the city of East Lansing. And so you have a lot of different municipalities that are gonna be involved in this, okay? We used to be a much bigger player on Chandler Road than we are today because of the 529 land at East Lansing annexed from Bath Township. But we still have significant resources on Chandler Road, just not as much as we had before. So you'll have DeWitt Township involved, Bath Township involved, the city of East Lansing involved. The county will be involved because they're gonna administer the program. That $10 million does not come to us. It goes to the contractor at the county to do the work, okay? So they're gonna have a lot of discussions on this because there's so many groups involved. But just kind of keep that all in mind.
Sounds good. And it's mostly infrastructure development to be able to
Yeah, so the sewer is a major part because right now with the size of the pipe that we have going on Chandler Road, we are at capacity with development. So in
Okay.
order for there to be additional development to happen, we need to upsize that pipe.
Okay.
And address some of the flow issues happening. So this will be significant for economic growth through there, obviously. But then also redoing a road that has needed some work for quite some time.
The road's gonna be much wider.
Yes.
Shorter distance for people to hit the putt. Yeah, just the fence on the side of the golf course there.
Yes, and they're
Seems that every other week.
they're gonna be looking at that
someone's
too, because obviously that portion with the golf course is gonna be a little interesting, widening that, so they're kinda coming up with some ideas of how to address that too, so,
Well, you know-
Just the ground itself
yeah,
is gonna be interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, they
because
call it
it's-
Chandler's Marsh. for-
yes, exactly.
Right.
That's a dangerous part of the road in the wintertime.
Oh, yeah, it's,
Like that
it
is
blows
like a, yeah,
and.
that's like an ice rink.
Yeah,
I think
it's
that-
terrible.
That's probably primarily why people slide
Oh.
off there, cause you're
Yes.
going 55
And then
and
it's-
it's not safe there.
No.
I made that mistake last winter with my wife. We were here at the township for some reason and it was snowing. It wasn't too bad over here. So I said, well, we'll go down Drumhill Road and go right into East Lansing. Well, when I got over there, the wind was blowing, I don't know how hard. But not only couldn't you see, it was just a complete whiteout from
Yeah.
like Stoll Road all the way down to State.
Yeah.
And you knew there were cars in front of you and cars behind you, and you just kinda held on through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And hoped you didn't slide off the road or get blown off the road.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not a good road to be on in a storm.
No.
No.
It blows across from Eagle Eye. That,
Oh, yeah.
that- where
It's
the,
just
the
a wide
driving
open
range
space.
is. It just it blows. Yeah.
Yep.
It wasn't one of my better decisions.
We need to look at putting some trees there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
right.
talked about talking to the golf course about that, or, you know, a couple other options, so.
Yeah.
There's one
That's
other
DeWitt
thing
Township,
I
so.
think I should mention is we have a, Miles is gone, but we have a $585,000 grant that could come in for streetlights on the Webster Road project. And that would be significant because that would allow us to light that whole corridor. So we're all hoping that some of these grants get approved.
Right. It's always nice when grants get approved and chosen.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the timeline on the Spark grant?
I looked the other day and there was
Oh,
nothing.
did you check? I totally forgot to check.
I
was
did
going to.
maybe 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and I don't know that they've made an announcement when they haven't announced the announcement date, I don't think. I'll check and see if I can find if they have
Okay.
a projected announcement date, but I haven't. Yeah, I just logged in to see and it
Yeah,
was just
I was
like
gonna do it today. and
in
just totally
progress
forgot.
or whatever, submitted, I
Yeah.
think is just what the status was, so.
If we are awarded the Spark grant, how does that come into the budget? Is it just,
So it'll be revenue, and then it'll have to be, a budget amendment in order for it to go into a line item to be expended.
I would imagine they wanna get that money out pretty quickly, so.
And then there'll be another budget amendment to fund the difference from whatever gets approved to what the final price is gonna be.
If there is a
Well, that
difference,
is-
difference, yes.
But it is a
24?
catalyst, it is a catalyst for change.
is that 24 funds or still this year?
I think it'd be 24, cause it'd probably
Yes,
be,
it would
and
be
then
24.
I think it has to be expended by
26, I think.
26, that's it,
I
yeah.
thought it was 26.
So whatever, August 31st, or maybe they might have pushed that one to October. It was
I think it was
fall of
26,
twenty
so,
twenty-six, yeah, it has to be expended by, which didn't seem like, for those they've got some other projects they funded where it's big
Yeah,
infrastructure redevelopment, that kind of thing, where 2 years is gonna be a crunch to get those funds spent at some of those awards, but. So. Yeah, I'll log in again and see this week
Okay.
and just see where we're at and see if I can find a date for that.
sounds good.
Cool, alright, any comments?
I should have sent out when you were recreation stuff, but I just wanted to let you know about soccer is Ashley Murray was the program, director, kind of person doing it, and she stepped down.
Okay.
She lives in Ovid LC, so I didn't figure she'd be around much longer for it, but we appreciated her time, she did a good job. And Randy Pape has stepped in and
Oh,
said that
okay.
he would go back to doing it. And so he did a great job before, and so we look forward to him doing it. I've been working with him, and I'm kind of doing like all the behind the scenes stuff, and he's gonna be the person there, and so he's gonna do the parent and coach meeting.
Okay.
It's gonna start, the first, whenever Labor Day weekend is, the week after that. The program will start, and we're gonna have registration go right up to like the week of. So that
Okay.
way, I made a flyer and I'm gonna pass it out to all the kindergarten and preschool families when they start school. So that way, I always feel like we get a bigger number in spring because kindergarten families, have a hard
Right.
time knowing about stuff. And so we're gonna pass out the flyers to go in their Friday folder that first week of school.
Okay.
And then, maybe we'll get a couple more kids, and then he's gonna do the coaches meeting, the parent meeting, and then we're gonna get shirts ordered, and right now I think there's around like 35 kids signed up for it.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I just wanted to let you know that Ashley had stepped down and Randy stepped in, and, registration is still rolling. Maybe I could send you that flyer even.
Yeah,
about
that'd be
that,
great.
So we could maybe email it to families or post it or something.
Yeah, Becca can email it out to her lists and.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, so that's what I let you know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great meeting, Park Lake, Rose Lake, biking, farm to table, and soccer. My favorite conversations.
Oh. All right, well, the
Make a
motion to adjourn at
motion to adjourn.
7:37, yeah, all right, second,
Second?
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned at 7:37.
All right.
Good work, everyone.